What's up, everybody? Welcome to Extra Serving. Happy New Year. It's another episode of Extra Serving, a podcast from Nation's Restaurant News. On this cold and wintry day, I am joined in snow friendship by my colleague, Alicia Kelso. Alicia, how many inches of snow do you have right now?
We have 9 inches in Louisville, Kentucky, which is very rare, and it's still coming down. So
this is a southern storm. It's a southern storm.
My kid's upstairs running around, probably without a shirt on, and certainly without his teeth brushed. So forgive if he makes a cameo.
We are. Oh no, that would be just the best. I think that we need one of those. It is Monday, January 6th, the day our children should be back at school.
Yes,
and yet the weather has different plans. It was a southern storm. We only have 3 inches here in Columbus. Which was a little disappointing to my kids because I told them, hey, kids, the forecast says 5 to 10 inches. But it's okay. They don't have school, so that's all they care about. They're outside as we speak. Alicia, I should address the elephant in the room, which is what I'm wearing, which only those who are watching on YouTube can see. But ladies and gentlemen, please check out my Whataburger Comfy. Not a Snuggie, Comfy. The wearable blanket, as seen on Shark Tank.
It looks like you're about ready to enter like a boxing ring.
There we go. You got to go to the YouTube to get this. That's the full effect. Thank you to my friends at Whataburger for sending this very warm, comfy. And I should say my daughter Mabel wore it for half of Christmas break. She was moving around like a little blob because this thing is a large. I mean, it's big on me, and she's obviously 8, so she's small. And she would just collapse on the floor in a heap of Whataburger comfy. So that was the definition of my Christmas break. Alicia, how was your Christmas break?
It was lovely. We didn't travel. We didn't host. We just stared at each other and cooked a lot of food and I drank a lot of bourbon, which is fine. We haven't had a holiday like that where we were immobile, and I kind of liked it.
Yeah, I used to travel a lot more back when I lived in North Carolina and visited all of the family in Ohio. But we still have family all over Ohio. So I did a few crisscross trips around the state. And I did not like that. I love seeing family, don't get me wrong. But having to pack a car with children and stuff, especially for some of them, we just got back from Lima, where my in-laws are. And we were there for, I think, less than 24 hours, but it was probably 2 hours of packing because that's
as much time as you need in Lima.
Exactly. We drove home and we said, you know what? That was the exact right.
I can say that because I'm also a 419 area code.
That's right.
Person,
the 419.
So, yes.
Well, you will also appreciate this, Alicia. We spent a few days in Sandusky over break where we went to Castaway Bay, the indoor water park owned by Cedar Point. It was a thing that we did. You warned me about these indoor water parks.
I hope that we're past that phase. So don't ever mention it around my child ever. Keep your mouth shut.
And here's the thing. It was 2 days of grumpiness and stress and, yelling and what have you. And I walked away thinking, well, at least the kids loved it. Yeah. It's one of those things. All parents know. I do want to, before we jump in, give one shout out, though, to Steven Schuster, the owner of Sandusky Bay Pancake House. This was my first meal of 2025. Breakfast on New Year's Day. We enjoyed a wonderful breakfast at Sandusky Bay Pancake House and got to spend some time with the owner, Steven Schuster, who had invited me to visit next time I was in town, and we were in town. Great story. He was an old Perkins franchisee, converted in 2020, I believe, into his own unique concept that he's hoping to scale. And it's got strong, First Watch vibes, but with a very distinct personality. So I think a lot of room for growth there. But he's thinking maybe regional growth, maybe around Northern Ohio. So maybe your kin up in Northwest Ohio might have a chance to try that sometime. So if you're ever in Sandusky, if you're ever visiting Cedar Point, in other words, go check out Sandusky Bay Pancake House. Okay, Alicia, shall we jump into it?
Sure. I don't know what day it is, but let's go for it.
It's early 2025, which means we've got to talk about some of the, let's just talk about we're roaring into 2025 with some distinct trends. And there are 2 that you've highlighted that you think are very definitive of early 2025 so far, very clearly the early trends of the year, very, very early. We're 6 days in. The two you think that are going to define the early part of this year, at least, are value and beverage. So let's start with value, because we already have some value news in the new year. Tell me first, what's that news that we got just today?
It's January 6th, but it's only it's only the third full business day. It's not even a full business day. There have been 2 business days so far in 2025.
Yep.
And our inbox has already been flooded literally by these announcements, which is fun. I like deriving trends easily. I don't like searching.
Makes it easy for us.
Yeah, I don't know what day it is. I'm a little compromised mentally after taking a little break. So thank you everybody for making this easy. But yeah, we are coming out of the gate very hot so far in 2025 with value, a continuation of arguably the biggest theme from especially the second half of 2024. No surprise. And I say no surprise because McDonald's, we always talk about as McDonald's goes, so goes the industry. And, they're the bellwether, basically. And they announced a few months ago that their McValue platform will be launching nationally on January 7th. And so, to no surprise, we're coming, like I said, out of the gate really hot. We have value news already this year on our second business day from KFC with $5 bowls. Subway has a new meal deal that they announced. Applebee's is extending its $9.99 deal. Del Taco has new bundles. I'm certain I'm missing some, but just again for 2 days in. That's pretty copious.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. And it's Monday, we're recording this on Monday of the first full week of 2025. So I imagine that we will be doing value news. And this is not a huge surprise. I want to sort of be clear here. January is always a pretty heavy value month because, it's slow. People are recovering from their holiday spending. This cyclically is not unusual. What is different this time is like I mentioned earlier, it is a continuation of the intensifying value environment that started really in the second quarter of 2024 when traffic kind of fell off a cliff and didn't really recover. We saw some signs of recovery toward the end of the year, but again, with January and February traditionally being lower spend and lower traffic months because of that holiday spending recovery, I think we're sort of compounded with the value environment. And again, as McDonald's goes, you get the largest chain by unit count coming out with a really holistic and aggressive McValue platform this week. You pretty much have to keep pace with that.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting, especially 2024, this time last year, we had labeled 2024 the year of marketing. We could see the writing on the wall a year ago that 2024 traffic had hit that wall, had jumped off that cliff, and that restaurants were going to need to do something about marketing. And of course, one of the easiest arrows in the quiver, so to speak, when it comes to marketing is value and a value menu. And so sure enough, 2024, we saw a lot of activity in the value wars. Now, as with anything, you can't expect a switch to be flipped, so we shouldn't have said, 2025, that's going away now. There's no more, emphasis on marketing, no more emphasis on value. 2025 will be year of marketing part 2. And so, same with inflation, the Fed cut rates, that doesn't flip the switch on inflation. That doesn't flip the switch on costs suddenly going down. And so I think, yes, we should expect at least the first half of 2025 to be heavily focused on marketing, heavily focused on value. I mean, especially right now, January, you think about, I don't know the data on this totally, so I'm not going to throw numbers out there, but January is, I imagine, a fairly soft month for restaurants. Weather has a huge impact on restaurant sales. Even just a rainy day can really heavily impact restaurant sales. And so with January, it's cold out, it's snowy as we speak. People are not going out to restaurants as much. So what do? You have got to entice them. And that's why I expect we will see, that's why we're seeing it now, why we'll see it over the next couple of days. The other thing too, I have to imagine with New Year's resolutions. You're going to see a lot of activity
Mhm.
around,
Yeah.
oh, it's a new you. You've changed your behaviors and your attitudes. Here's a new us. Here's a new thing we're doing. Maybe that aligns with, your maybe you've made a New Year's resolution to save money, to do better job budgeting. Well, here you go. Here's a value menu that's going to align with that. So we're going to see a lot of activity certainly in January, probably into February. But again, the flip isn't going to get switched with the new administration in a couple of weeks. The flip isn't going to get switched ever. It's just going to be a gradual come down from the, awful inflation. You can't take me seriously when I'm wearing this thing,
I
can you?
can't. I can't. I'm sorry. You're like working up a sweat.
Oh, I know. Okay, here, I'm going to at least
Yeah.
unzip this thing. It's just, I see your little grin as I'm talking about very serious things. I'm like, you can't take me seriously. There we go. Now I feel a little bit like Santa Claus with the fleece
Yeah.
showing. But anyway, yes, value is really of the utmost importance, I think, for restaurants right now to figure out what the value message is. Now, as we've talked about a lot of times, though, you cannot wholesale discount your whole menu and then pray that it works. You have got to do this strategically. You've got to figure out a way to attract customers through value messaging that gives you an out. You have to have an out down the road to say, we're going to go back to regular prices, we're going to unbundle or whatever it is. Because after a while, once you get traffic back, once customers are out spending their discretionary income again, you've got to be able to walk back from this because you can't hang on that value messaging forever.
I think that's why we're seeing a heavier lean into the digital exclusive values, that, in identification of the loss leaders, as what Applebee's is doing. I think we've talked about this a lot before, but I think we have more data at our exposure now as operators. And so I think we're more sophisticated and smarter with protecting the margins in an environment like this. And we have the digital, at our fingertips, the digital customers at our fingertips to push these exclusive values. And, that's a virtuous signal because we're getting them into our digital infrastructure and then we're learning more about them. And so it's not like you and I have talked about this at length because we started in this industry when, the proverbial, hit the fan.
Yep.
And margins were compromised all over the place because we went really a little too aggressively into value and compromised the heck out of our margins. I don't think that's going to be the case here.
Right.
Hopefully not. But again, we have the data, we have the sophistication that we did not have 15 years ago. And that's why, even the McValue menu, as holistic as it is, you have loss leaders in that, but there's a digital piece to that local operators can leverage. And I think that's really a key part of, McDonald's approach to this. Same with KFC's that they announced this morning. They've got a digital exclusive piece to this. So.
Yeah, totally agree. It makes a lot of sense. Consider yourself very fortunate if you are running a restaurant today and you didn't 15 years ago when there was no easy way out of that discounting. There was no strategic win when you were discounting outside of, again, just sort of that Hail Mary, let's hope people come back and spend money with us again. So yes, that's a great point to say that when you strategically devise your value menu and message, make digital a big piece of it. Try to get a return on the investment that is not purely financial. Get some data out of this because that will benefit you down the road. Now, the other thing you had mentioned to me, you see as being very strong coming out of the gate here in 2025 is beverage. Now, beverage, we saw obviously a lot of activity in the beverage space last year. The drive-through coffee brands, Starbucks with their own Hail Mary, getting Brian Niccol as CEO, the explosion in Dutch Bros, the incredible competition, and the interest from customers in much more diversity of beverage options. So this year, we're already seeing Starbucks and Dunkin' and Dutch Bros coming out with new beverages. We see Sabrina Carpenter partnering with Dunkin'. By the way, that's like 2 years too late. I mean, I don't want to say it's too late because she seems like the most popular musician out there right now. I know who she is. That's a good start, right? I know who she is. I think I could pick her out of a lineup. But I mean, I'm not an alien. I've heard espresso 1,000 times. How did nobody do this already? How did nobody partner with her?
We had this conversation last weekend with a group of my friends. Like, what? That seems so obvious. Why are we just now? And it's a cute campaign, and she is absolutely prolific. And
yeah.
Has been since
She's
that
everywhere.
song came out. Yeah. So I think this is marketing genius
I
for
believe she
them.
set some records. Something like 4 of the top 10 singles at one point in the last couple of months were Sabrina Carpenter. Now, again, forgive my ignorance, but I
All
know
of them sounding the exact same.
I know espresso. But hey, credit where it's due. To be able to accomplish what she's accomplishing in
Sure.
music is an enormous feat. Now, Dunkin' has partnered with her. Remind me, there's oat milk and brown sugar. What kind of espresso is this? Just those two. An espresso beverage with those. Okay.
Yep. And then you've got the Starbucks coming out with a new cortado, which our colleague Brett Thorne was very excited about because he wants to trademark shake shooter.
Oh yes, the shake shooter. Yeah. That is a mini milkshake for those who would like
pretty
to take
much a mini. Yes,
I believe he has granted permission to anybody who wants to take that and use that name. So you go for it. Just give him a credit.
And then of course the Dutch Bros had a new lineup of cereal drinks. It's supposed to taste like the milk at the end of your cereal. I thought that was kind of interesting, and
it's got some with Christina Tosi from Milk Bar. Isn't that what she did? Milk Bar cereal. That's about as far as I'm going to go with that.
Yeah.
But, I get the inclination to use cereal milk as a treat. I got to tell you though, I did try the Milk Bar version and it was not my jam. But
because you're not a 10-year-old. But I think the point here is, we saw McDonald's grow Cosmics to 10 locations last year. We saw Taco Bell come out with a new test concept in Live Más Cafe and egregiously say they want their drinks to be as iconic as their food, which is a huge statement coming from Taco Bell.
Yeah.
And so this innovation, I think, is going to become a little significantly more sexy because now everybody is jockeying for position. It's not just Starbucks, Dutch Bros, Scooters, Seven Brew. It's, Starbucks, Dunkin', Seven Brew, Scooters, McDonald's, Taco Bell. Chick-fil-A came out with key lime beverages. Everybody's jockeying for that sort of, I guess, veto vote would be applicable here, because if there's a fun beverage at Taco Bell, why do I need to go to Seven Brew? Because I can get my food and my, churro chiller, which is my favorite, at the Taco Bell instead of doing 2 stops. And I always find that to be a really fascinating play for these sort of incidental, sort of, special intent traffic.
Yeah.
As these kind of concepts continue to grow aggressively, why wouldn't the bigger players try and stop some of that hemorrhage of special intent trips? Seems happening, with desserts. Like we saw Perkins came out today. I think they were, they launched a new donut or something. And I'm stunned by the donut concepts that are growing. I do think there will be a shake-out like frozen yogurt and cupcakes and so forth. But as these specialty brands grow aggressively, the big brands are wise to innovate on their menu to stop from losing that special intent traffic over to those specialty brands.
Just had this conversation about donuts. Are you familiar with Pat's Donuts and Cream in Northwest Ohio?
No.
Maybe that's a Lima specialty, but it's been around for eons, and it's a very straightforward donut spot in Lima, Ohio, where my wife is from. And I mean, it's a go-to. It's like QP in Lima, right? It's like you go there every time you're there. But the conversation we were having was around this fact that like some places just hit different, right? And it's like, and it's not just the donut. It is this place has been around for a while. This place, it's the vibe. It's that they're cheap. And honestly, they're average donuts, but there's an experience of it that's a little bit different. And that's what I think some of these concepts miss, right? When you're trying to jump on a trend, cookies, another one, right? Cookies, cupcakes, especially around treats. It's people aren't necessarily coming there for your price or quality. Sometimes they're going there because of the experience that they're looking for. And I think that's true of these beverage places too, right? So yes, Taco Bell can compete with Seven Brew by putting out a line of beverages, but is it the same kind of, quick drive-through hospitality experience that Seven Brew's offering? And that's where I think some of these drive-through only places stand to benefit, is that they can offer a little bit more of a different experience than some of these QSRs that have a different experience that they've offered forever. Now they're trying to be something else. So it's interesting to see. I think also one of the predictions we had for 2025 was those drive-through coffee places are going to start developing maybe some food items. So it's going to go reverse, where they might have more reasons to come grab a beverage and also a snack or a treat of some kind, to go up more against the traditional QSRs that are rolling out the beverages. So it will definitely be interesting to watch what happens in the beverage category this year. I think what we're going to have is there's going to be less of this is a rising trend and more of this trend has arrived. What does it look like now in the mainstream? How are the major QSRs, the major brands competing against the emerging players? How do they all work together? I got to tell you, the Seven Brew just opened by my house over Christmas break. I have not yet gone.
Yeah, go.
I've driven by a couple of times, and it's just pretty. It's it's the lights, and there's been a line like forever long the whole time. So that's why I haven't gone yet. But, that's appealing. And it got this teeny little, piece of real estate right by my house where, very traditional, suburban, whatever. Anyway, this year will be, I think the cream rises to the top. It shakes out. We see who's going to win in this category. I want to touch really quickly before we leave the beverage conversation, though, on alcohol.
I would be happy to talk.
Shall we pull out our alcohol?
What do you need to know? My area of expertise.
So a few days ago, the Surgeon General of the United States announced his suggestion that there should be a warning of cancer warning on alcohol, that much like cigarettes got the label for cancer warning, that alcohol should have the same, because data has shown that alcohol, I don't know if it's correlation causation. I again don't know the full report, but studies have shown that excess alcohol consumption can lead to increased chance of getting cancer. Which I'm sure, Alicia, like me, you read that and went, oh no. So it is dry January. The Surgeon General says, hey, alcohol could lead to cancer. The younger generations are already saying, hey, we're going to drink less. There's a huge crop of alcohol-free alternatives coming out. What does this mean for restaurants that, especially the full-service restaurants that hinge so much on their bar sales?
Yeah, though, this caught me with great interest because of that very question. And this advisory, to be clear, I believe it needs congressional approval before the label is actually slapped on there.
And who knows if, I don't know with the administration change out, I don't know if there's time enough to do that. I don't know.
But the advisory is out there nonetheless. And I think that is enough to catch people's interest. And I actually emailed the National Restaurant Association last week asking if they had a take on this or statement, and their policy team was still out on vacation. I emailed a couple of smaller restaurant associations, including the New York City Hospitality Alliance, and everybody's just kind of taking a wait and see approach to see if this does come to fruition.
Yeah.
When we slapped this warning on cigarettes in the 1960s, we saw what has happened since then. It's been, I think, an 80% reduction in smoking.
Yeah.
What percentage of that has to do with this label, I think, is impossible to gauge, but surely some of that does come from, this warning, this egregious warning, this can cause cancer. For full service, this could be, I think catastrophic is a pretty safe word to use here, because full service restaurants that serve alcohol get over 20% of their sales mix from alcohol sales. Yeah. That is even higher at fine dining establishments. I think it's upwards of 30% at fine dining establishments. And of course, we know that alcohol is hugely profitable.
Yes.
The profit margins on alcohol are, I think they're above 50%, well above 50%, in fact. And so this, I think, is a really ground game discussion right now, but I think it's certainly something to keep an eye on. And to your point, Sam, the non-alcoholic spirits and THC infused categories are growing at, meteorically. In response, already prior to this advisory, are growing meteorically in response to the younger generations that are abstaining. So about a third of consumers 18 to 24 don't drink alcohol at all. And those that do drink significantly less. About 20% the millennials did at their age. And so establishments that sell alcohol and rely on alcohol for 20+% of their sales mix would probably be wise to find alternatives here right now.
Yeah. You're right. No, and we talked about this briefly on our holiday Drinked In Live before Christmas, which you can still catch over at NRN's LinkedIn page. But I've been having this conversation with Katie for a while now. She and I have talked a lot about cutting back on we're a hardcore glass of wine at the end of the day kind of couple. And, for the sake of our health, we both have been talking about alternatives. So we're not doing dry January strictly, but we are doing drinking on weekends only for January. And as we speak, I'm expecting, unless the weather has other plans, I did order some of these mushroom beverages that everybody's been talking about that supposedly give you the same kind of, mellow as alcohol, but are no alcohol, no calories, no sugar, no beverage. I don't know. I have no flavor probably, but we're going to find out. I've never tried the alternative here, but look, I mean, I think you probably feel it too, right? Which is you get to a point where you're like, okay, yeah, like there's a over reliance on this thing, and there all are alternatives. So let's try those alternatives. I think the silver lining here for restaurants is that if people are not drinking alcohol, they still want to drink something. And so you do have an opportunity to innovate with no alcohol mocktails. Brett Thorne hates that word, so I'm sorry, Brett. But mocktails or just beverage innovation outside of alcohol. Try some new things. The dirty soda trend, I think, is an interesting thing to point at too, which is to say consumers have shown that they are open to alternatives when it comes to sodas, and they're very interested in this kind of beverage innovation. Boba is big now. So I guess the point is there are a lot of options out there to play around with beverage innovation, flavor, and quality that doesn't have to include alcohol, doesn't have to include sugar, doesn't have to include any number of things. It can just be, quality beverage for the quality's sake. So that's the silver lining, but it's not so simple as that, because again, your margins are going to be different on a no alcohol mocktail than they will be on, that old fashioned. Right. So I think as an industry has to be on top of it. Much like have to be on top of those, the Ozempic and those drugs as well. And that's a topic for another day, because that's a whole rabbit hole we could get down. But as the consumer shifts its behavior toward eating and drinking, that obviously has a direct impact on restaurants. And that's what we're seeing here.
Yep. No question.
Okay. I want to just briefly touch on Noodles and Company, because Noodles and Company is at risk of being delisted from NASDAQ because it is trading at such a low price. I don't even know what it's at now. It's below $1. Yes,
it's been below $1 for about a month, which is why I got this warning, basically.
Which is part of the deal. Yeah, if you can't trade above $1, you got to go. What's going on with Noodles? Because Noodles 2 or 3 years ago, I felt like Noodles was one of the so-called winners of the pandemic. It sort of figured its stuff out pretty quickly. It stood up a digital platform pretty quickly, seemed to be riding high. Then its C-suite sort of disappeared. It turned over a lot of executives. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden we see Noodles is doing so poorly that they might get kicked off NASDAQ. Why do you think that is?
Gosh, I have been perusing LinkedIn, Twitter, Reddit, trying to understand exactly that. When this company went public, and I think 2013, it was trading near $50. At the beginning of 2024, it was above $3, and now it's sustained under $1 to be out of compliance. And they have until late June to reach that dollar mark. I don't think there's a one answer. I think leadership turnover is always really hard to gain footing on any kind of strategic plan. But Noodles has struggled more than most, including and especially compared to its fast casual peers. And I think, what surprises me most about this is it seems like it's a pretty, a category of one. Like we always see Wingstop and Chipotle and Cava promote, the competitors in the space with Noodles and Company arguably are like maybe Panda Express. We are seeing a huge, big jump over toward like Asian noodles, ramen. But even that seems, not quite on par competitively because noodles is all kinds of noodles,
Yeah. Global.
Maybe that's the issue. Maybe they don't
Yeah.
have an identity on their menu. I have seen that they are working in earnest on a new menu. To me, from my vantage point, it seems like there is not a strong brand identity, not just as it comes to the menu. There's not a huge marketing presence. It's not going to be top of mind. More consumers obviously are turning to noodles with the,
Right.
with the rise in hot pot and ramen and Panda Express is doing tremendously. Olive Garden is doing well.
Yeah.
You could blame the idea that consumers are shunning carbs. I don't think that's it. I think there's just not a brand identity here, not a huge marketing presence to showcase what their differentiators are. I think their real estate has always been kind of wonky and like really not easy in and out. They don't have a huge drive-through presence, if at all, and their stores are big, and so we're talking about occupancy costs pressuring. Their AUVs last year were $1.3 million.
Yeah.
And that's compared to 1.7 for Payway and 2.5 for Panda Express. So unit economics are a problem here. What is that? How do we fix that first before?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think the identity first and foremost is a real problem. And in a time when identity is kind of everything, when consumers are choosing which brands they want to align with, especially younger generations, this so-called lifestyle brand, does it align with my lifestyle? You have a brand like Cava, which is also quote unquote global, obviously Mediterranean. And it means something to people. And I think it has this great loyal following because it's a very clearly defined concept. And Noodles struggles to find that definition. Even when you explain the size of their restaurants, it's like, okay, well, is that full service? Is it a QSR? Is it a fast casual? If it doesn't have drive-through, all of those things to me, exactly what I was thinking with Noodles as well, which is, it doesn't know what it is. And if it doesn't know what it is, its consumer is not going to know what it is. And if the consumer doesn't know what it is, then they're never going to know when to go there. I will be honest with you. I live about 1.5 miles from a Noodles and I have for 2.5 years, and I have never been. And they even have a kids eat free thing, which might also be part of the problem. I think their value maybe went a little too far. But my kids love Noodles. They're children. Of course they love Noodles. And we still haven't gone because it's like, what's the right occasion for Noodles in company? Is it lunch? Is it dinner? Is it Italian? Is it Asian? And so therein lies, I think, Noodles and Company's problem. And the lesson for other concepts is know who you are, what you serve, who your customer is, and hit that hard every single day. Don't leave it open for interpretation because your customer is not going to do a very good job interpreting it.
Correct. And we've talked about this a lot. Marketing is very critical right now because consumers are more discerning. How do you get to top of mind? How do you get stomach share when, traffic is still at a lull? You've got to cut through the noise and explain who you are and why people should care.
Exactly. Okay, good time to turn to our extra serving of the day. We are going to talk about White Castle, and White Castle announced a new breakfast item. Here to join us to talk about White Castle breakfast and who knows what else is senior editor Joanna Fantozzi. Joanna, welcome and Happy New Year.
Hello, Happy New Year.
Joanna, try not to be too jealous of my Whataburger comfy. But if you like,
so themed and cozy.
I know. I feel very cozy. Thank you. I had to unzip it because it's too hot. Even in my cold basement on a 20-degree day, I'm still boiling in this thing. But it is.
Sam was having hot flashes.
I was having hot flashes. It is so true. But the comfy, if anybody wants, I keep calling it, I go back and forth, cozy, comfy. It's a comfy. It is a comfy. Anyway, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about White Castle. White Castle announced a new all-day breakfast item. And a part of, I think Alicia and I just got done talking about how value and beverage will be huge in 2025. Joanna, I want to know from you, do you think, as indicated by White Castle's announcement and some other news in the industry, do you think breakfast is going to be a big theme in 2025?
I absolutely do think that breakfast is going to be big in 2025. It's also interesting because I do feel like, and Alicia could probably speak to this as well, that it oscillates whether breakfast is up or down. And actually the French toast sliders are actually not new. They are returning. And which it makes sense because I do feel like that's become like a really popular menu strategy for a lot of quick service chains, popularized especially by various Yum brands, especially Taco Bell. They love to bring back old favorites. It actually immediately, the French toast sliders immediately reminded me of another breakfast item that was introduced last year, which was the Panera Cinna Scrambles. Don't love the name, but
Yeah, hard to say.
it makes it seem like they're scrambling eggs with cinnamon, which would be gross.
Right.
But it's using it's breakfast sandwiches using cinnamon buns. This is using breakfast sandwiches using French toast. So very similar, reminded me of it a lot. Makes me think that maybe indulgent breakfasts may be back. It's really interesting because Taco Bell and McDonald's kind of pulled back on breakfast for a while there. And so I do think that breakfast will be bigger in 2025, and brands like White Castle are going to be leading the way with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Alicia, I don't want to steal your thunder here, but you had mentioned that breakfast was trending down, but sales were up probably because of prices being up.
Yes.
But Alicia, what's your take on breakfast and whether you think is it coming back? Do we think there's opportunity here?
I think breakfast and late night, those 2 day parts are the most concept by concept thing in the industry. I think lunch and dinner are table stakes. And I think depending on individual unit economics, can you justify the labor involved in breakfast? I think that's why Taco Bell started giving franchisees a option to opt out of breakfast, because individually it might be worth it based on traffic and sales for some franchisees in certain markets that are heavy on breakfast. Others, I think it's hard to justify. I think the same obviously is true for late night. But breakfast in November, traffic for breakfast in November was down 4.5%, according to Revenue Management Solutions data. Conversely, Toast data shows that breakfast spending was up, in some cases double digits. And that, again, that's because when we talk about food costs, input costs, breakfast is outpacing everything else. Orange juice prices, coffee prices. We can talk about eggs. They're up triple digits. I'm no avian flu expert, but I don't know if that's going to go. I don't know if that's going to dissipate or if we're going to get relief on egg prices anytime soon. And that absolutely kills the business of breakfast. That said, if you can justify it, breakfast is the most profitable day part. So, it's got to be worth it.
Joanna, Alicia and I were talking earlier in the podcast about, the beverage trend that Taco Bell, KFC, everybody's trying to get in on beverages to go up against Seven Brew, Dutch Bros. Breakfast has a part to play here, right? Because, of course, with the drive-through only coffee brands, coffee being big at breakfast. Now, I think those brands obviously have a huge play for afternoon snack day part as well. But breakfast being the key day part here for coffee, do we think that maybe as we see the coffee brands explode, maybe breakfast has a resurrection alongside it?
Yeah, I definitely do think that. I especially think that the beverage sales, I feel like, have just been through the roof. And like you said, a lot of quick service brands are trying to emulate the popularity of some of these beverage driven concepts. But when they are caffeinated beverages, mostly coffee, breakfast sales tend to go hand in hand with that. What's interesting, though, is that historically, we'll see if this kind of changed, but historically, brands like Starbucks and Dunkin' have kind of struggled a little bit with their food sales and kind of hitting the right mark, specifically not as much their snack sales, but in breakfast items. I feel like a lot of people just don't really, the taste scores are not as great. For me personally, I do feel like a lot of the breakfast items at like a Starbucks and Dunkin' don't really quite hit the mark. But I do think that breakfast is set to resurge. Something that is really interesting, Alicia, that you mentioned is that you kind of you want to do one or the other. You want to do either late night or the early morning day part because of these of both operational complexities and the labor costs involved. But something that I find interesting, going back to White Castle, is that White Castle is trying to do both. because they have been pushing really hard their Night Castle, their late night day part, and giving it totally unique merch and all that. So now they're also pushing breakfast. So they're trying to be best of both worlds, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it will be interesting to see. I mean, I think breakfast, never count breakfast out. We all thought breakfast was dead with COVID. And you know what? Breakfast did just fine. It ebbs and flows like anything else is my guess. So I think there is real opportunity here for breakfast to make a comeback in 2025. All right, before I let you go, because we do have to jump to a call, but I want to really quickly do our lightning round, and that is New Year's resolutions for 2025. Joanna, what's your New Year's resolution?
Oh, no,
One New Year's
putting
resolution.
me on the spot.
It can be simple, it can be small, it can be big. I don't care. Just give me one New Year's resolution.
I really want to stay hydrated more. Is that a lame one? I do feel like I don't drink quite enough water. I'm not like dehydrated all the time, but I do want to fill my water bottle up multiple times throughout the day. That's a very simple one.
That's a good one. That's something I committed to several years ago, and it's an easy way to stay healthy. So that's a good one. Alicia, what's your New Year's resolution?
I don't do resolutions.
Okay, moving on. No, you got nothing. You got no goals for 2025.
I have goals. Okay. But I don't do resolutions.
I don't do resolutions either, but I can come up with some.
Maybe I'll start. I would like to. Okay, here's one. I would like to maybe do a little bit more personal reading and less earnings report reading.
Yeah, for your own sanity. Good Lord. Okay, well, I'll say I'm not a big resolution guy too, because I always fail at them if I try too hard at actually making it formal. But my thing for this year, and I've already started it, it's been a couple months going, you guys know I'm doing this, get off my phone more. I'm leaving my phone in the kitchen when I'm with my kids. I don't do Instagram anymore. I'm not glued to that thing. On Sundays, all of us iPhone users find out how much over the week we were, looking at our phone. I got it under 2 hours a day for the first time in a long time. And I was very proud of that. So I'm going to shoot for that. Less phone time. I'm in a bad industry for that. We're all in a bad industry for it, but I'm going to try my best. All right. That's it for our first extra serving of 2025. Joanna, Alicia, thanks as always.
Thanks for having us. Happy New Year.